Funny how some nights stick with you forever. I remember a time when neighborhoods were open places, kids on bikes, families waving at one another from porches, and gates were for farms, not communities. But these days, everything's fenced, regulated, and filed under rules written by people who barely know their neighbors. I never thought I'd see the day where the very community I moved into for peace of mind would be the same one that blocked me from saving a life. The call came through at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Static crackled over the radio as dispatch relayed the details: structure fire, 147, Maple Ridge Drive. Possible occupants inside. My heart kicked into high gear as I threw on my gear and jumped into engine 4 with the rest of my volunteer crew. That address was in my own neighborhood, Riverside Estates, where I'd lived for the past 15 years. We screamed through the empty streets, sirens wailing and lights blazing. The smell of smoke hit us before we even turned onto the private road leading into our gated community. My stomach twisted as I saw the orange glow painting the night sky. This was bad. Really bad. Then we hit the chain. Our 20-ton fire engine lurched to a stop, tires squealing against asphalt. Stretched across the entrance to Maple Ridge Drive was a thick metal chain padlocked to posts on either side. Behind it sat a white Lexus SUV parked sideways across the road like some kind of suburban barricade. I jumped out, rage boiling in my chest. This was exactly what I'd warned them about. Behind me, Captain Rodriguez was already on the radio, his voice tight with controlled fury as he reported the obstruction to dispatch. The house was only 300 yards away, but it might as well have been 3 miles with this barrier in our path. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I've been a volunteer firefighter in Riverside Estates for 8 years. It's a small private community of about 200 homes, all governed by an HOA that makes North Korea look relaxed. For most of my time here, the HOA had been annoying but manageable. Then Karen Hartley became president 6 months ago, and everything changed. Karen was the kind of woman who measured grass height with a ruler and sent violation notices for mailboxes that were the wrong shade of black. She lived 3 houses down from me on Maple Ridge Drive in a massive colonial that she treated like her personal fortress. Within weeks of taking power, she'd implemented a dozen new rules, each more ridiculous than the last. But the road restrictions were the worst. She convinced the board to install locked chain barriers at every entrance to reduce what she called undesirable outside traffic. When I brought up emergency access at the monthly meeting, she'd waved me off with a dismissive laugh. "Oh, please, Marcus," she'd said, examining her perfectly manicured nails. "Emergency services can just go around to the main entrance. We can't have random vehicles using our private roads as shortcuts." I tried explaining that seconds matter in emergencies, that the main entrance added precious minutes to response times. She'd accused me of being dramatic and fear-mongering, then had me removed from the meeting for being disruptive. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I'd filed formal complaints with the fire marshal, sent certified letters to the HOA board, even consulted with a lawyer. But Karen had deep pockets and a vindictive streak. She'd started targeting me with daily violation notices for everything from my driveway having a microscopic oil stain to my trash cans being visible from the street for 5 minutes too long. The dry season had started early this year, with drought conditions and high winds creating a tinderbox environment. I'd sent another warning to the HOA just last week, complete with statistics about response times and fire spread rates. Karen had responded by having my letter read aloud at the meeting in a mocking tone, calling me paranoid and suggesting I needed a hobby besides catastrophizing. Now, as I stood there watching smoke billow into the night sky, her words tasted like ash in my mouth. Captain Rodriguez appeared beside me, bolt cutters in hand. "We're cutting it," he said grimly. "Every second counts." That's when the white Lexus's door flew open, and out stepped Karen Hartley herself, wearing silk pajamas and a face full of rage. "What do you think you're doing?" she shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at the bolt cutters. "That chain is private HOA property. You have no right to destroy it." "Ma'am, there's a structure fire," Rodriguez said, his voice strained with the effort of remaining professional. "We need immediate access." "I don't care if the Queen of England is on fire," Karen snapped, positioning herself between Rodriguez and the chain. "This is a private road, and you don't have authorization. There are proper procedures to follow." Behind us, I could hear the second engine arriving, followed by the ladder truck. The radio chatter was getting more urgent. The fire was spreading fast, fed by the wind. Every instinct screamed at me to shove this woman aside and cut the chain myself. "Karen," I said, stepping forward. "People could die because of your power trip. Move aside now, or you'll be arrested for obstruction." She whirled on me with a sneer. "Of course, you're involved in this, Marcus. Still bitter about losing your little HOA election, aren't you? Well, I'm the president here, and I say you go around to the main entrance like you're supposed to." Rodriguez had heard enough. He keyed his radio and spoke clearly. "Dispatch, be advised we have an individual actively obstructing fire suppression efforts at 147, Maple Ridge Drive. Request immediate law enforcement assistance." 147. Karen's voice suddenly wavered. "Did you say 147? "Affirmative," Rodriguez replied, already moving toward the chain with the bolt cutters. 147, Maple Ridge Drive. "Now step aside, ma'am." The color drained from Karen's face like water from a burst dam. "That's my house," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant roar of flames. "My daughter, she's homesick today." "Oh God. Oh God. That's my house." She spun around, fumbling in her pajama pockets for keys, her hands shaking so violently she dropped them twice. "I'll unlock it. I'll unlock it right now. Please, you have to save her. Miranda's in there. She's only 14. The transformation was instant and complete. The imperious HOA president became a terrified mother, sobbing as she struggled with the padlock. Her perfectly styled hair fell in her face as she yanked at the chain, trying to pull it free before she'd even gotten the lock open. "Move," Rodriguez commanded, pushing past her with the bolt cutters. The chain snapped with a metallic shriek, and our convoy roared through, leaving Karen standing in the road, her silk pajamas fluttering in the wind. The scene that greeted us was every firefighter's nightmare. The entire second floor of Karen's colonial was engulfed, flames licking out of every window. The front door hung open, smoke pouring out like a black river. In the driveway, a figure in a nightgown stood on the lawn, and my heart lifted for a moment before I realized it was just a neighbor. "The girl's room is in the back," the neighbor screamed, pointing to the rear of the house, second floor, last window on the right. "I saw her at the window, but she's not there anymore." We moved like a well-oiled machine, Rodriguez barking orders as we deployed. I grabbed my air pack and followed Mitchell and Davis to the front door. The heat hit us like a physical wall, even through our gear. Visibility was zero past the entryway, thick smoke turning everything into a hellish twilight. "Stay low, stay together," I shouted, dropping to my knees. We crawled forward, following the wall, our training taking over. Behind us, I could hear the ladder truck positioning, water lines being charged. But I knew we had minutes at most before the second floor collapsed. Karen appeared in the doorway behind us, trying to push past the firefighter holding her back. "Miranda," she screamed. "Please, someone save my daughter." I blocked out her cries and focused on the search. Room by room, we cleared the first floor, then found the stairs. The heat intensified as we climbed, the roar of flames drowning out everything else. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched in both directions, every door a potential trap. "Split up," I ordered. "Mitchell, take left. Davis, with me." We turned right toward where the neighbor had indicated. The first door revealed a home office, already fully involved. The second was a bathroom, clear. The third door was closed, and I could feel intense heat radiating through it. This had to be it. I tried the handle, locked. Without hesitation, I stepped back and kicked. The door flew open to reveal a teenage girl's room transformed into an inferno. Posters curled and blackened on the walls, a canopy bed consumed by flames. And there, huddled in the far corner, was a small figure. "I've got her!" I yelled, rushing forward. Miranda was unconscious but breathing, overcome by smoke. I scooped her into my arms, her body terrifyingly light, and turned back to the door just as a section of ceiling collapsed behind us, sending a shower of burning debris across the room. Davis led the way out, using his axe to clear falling timber as we retreated. The stairs were starting to buckle, each step a gamble. We made it to the front door just as the upstairs hallway flashed over, a rolling wave of fire that would have killed us all 30 seconds later. I burst onto the lawn, Miranda limp in my arms, and immediately passed her to the waiting paramedics. They went to work with oxygen in 4 lines while I ripped off my mask, gasping in the cool night air. Around me, my brothers continued the fight, multiple lines now attacking the fire from all angles. Karen was there instantly, falling to her knees beside the gurney, sobbing her daughter's name over and over. When Miranda's eyes fluttered open and she weakly said, "Mom," Karen broke down completely, clutching her daughter's hand like a lifeline. It took 4 hours to fully extinguish the fire. By dawn, the Hartley house was a blackened skeleton, water dripping from charred timbers. The investigation would later reveal the cause was electrical, a fault in the attic wiring that had smoldered for hours before erupting. With proper response time, we could have contained it to 1 room. The delay at the gate had cost them everything. Karen sat on the neighbor's porch, wrapped in a Red Cross blanket, watching the investigators work. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. When she saw me approaching, she didn't sneer or snap. She just looked at me with hollow eyes. "Marcus," she said quietly. "I need to apologize, not just for tonight, but for everything. You tried to warn me, and I let my pride, my need to control everything, nearly kill my daughter." I sat down beside her, too exhausted to feel vindication. "Miranda's going to be fine," I said. "That's what matters." "The chain," she continued, staring at her destroyed home. "It delayed you by 6 minutes. The fire chief told me that. 6 minutes that let the fire spread from the attic to the entire 2nd floor. 6 minutes that almost cost me everything." She was quiet for a long moment, then said something I never expected to hear from Karen Hartley. "I'm resigning as HOA president, effective immediately, and I'll be recommending that all access restrictions be removed before someone else pays for my arrogance." At an emergency HOA meeting 2 weeks later, Karen stood before a packed room. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of what had happened. Her resignation letter was brief and to the point, no excuses or blame shifting. She endorsed an emergency measure to remove all road barriers and implement the fire department's recommended access plan. The vote was unanimous. As the meeting concluded, I approached her with a small box. Inside was a 6-inch section of the chain we'd cut that night, still bearing scorch marks from where burning debris had fallen on it during the overhaul. "For your new house," I said quietly, a reminder that some barriers aren't worth maintaining. She took the box with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. The room filled with HOA violations against her for the fire damage visible from the street, totaling $1,120 in fines. Her insurance company, citing negligent obstruction of emergency services, denied her claim, leaving her with a $410,000 mortgage on a pile of ash. The state fire marshal's investigation resulted in criminal charges for reckless endangerment, ultimately plea bargained down to 3 years, probation and 5,000 hours of community service with the fire department. Karen's expression as the judge read the sentence was one of complete devastation.